Welcome to This Explainer. We're diving right into Ang Lee's cinematic masterpiece, Life of Pi. Now, on the surface, you might think you're just getting a really visually stunning survival story. But as things unfold, it transforms into something so much bigger. We're talking about a super profound exploration of faith, fear, and the search for ultimate truth. Stick with me here, because the deeper meanings hidden just beneath the surface of this one will completely change how you view the whole narrative.
Just picture this setup for a second. You've got a young boy and a massive 450-pound Bengal tiger, and they are both trapped together on a tiny lifeboat right in the middle of a vast, endless ocean. So what's going to happen? Is that tiger going to eat the boy? Or, against literally all odds, will they somehow become each other's lifeline? It's a hook that grabs you immediately, but the answer is incredibly complex.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, a unique story. You know, to really grasp the huge psychological stakes of this journey, we've got to look at Pi's worldview before disaster even struck. He didn't have a typical childhood. He grew up in Pondicherry, India, literally living inside his dad's zoo. And his name? It comes from the mathematical symbol pi, 3.1415, hinting at the infinite, immeasurable nature of the journey he's about to go on. But here's the absolute kicker. Pi had this deep, genuine fascination with Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam all at once. He firmly believed that God has different paths, but one destination. It's this exact spiritual foundation, surrounded by wild animals and diverse faiths, that completely wires his mind for the trials ahead.
Which brings us to Section 2, the storm of the Timsum.
So everything pivots when Pi's dad sells the zoo and the family gets on this cargo ship called the Timsim, headed for Canada. Out of nowhere, in the dead of night, this terrifying storm just shreds the ship apart, plunging it into the ocean. Pi miraculously makes it to a lifeboat, but, well, he isn't alone. He's joined by an injured zebra, an orangutan, a hyena, and, yep, Richard Parker, that 450-pound Bengal tiger. What happens next is just raw survival of the fittest. The hyena completely loses it, aggressively taking out the zebra and the orangutan. But then, bam! Richard Parker strikes and kills the hyena. When the chaos clears, it's just Pi and the tiger left. Just a grieving kid and a fierce predator, totally isolated on the water.
Moving on to Section 3, Pi and Richard Parker.
Now this right here is the absolute core of the story. It shifts from a physical disaster straight into this intense, codependent psychological struggle. And it sounds crazy, but keeping Richard Parker alive is literally what keeps Pi from falling into total despair. Think about it for a second. If Pi were entirely alone out there, the crushing grief of losing his family and the sheer isolation probably would have destroyed him. But because he has this massive, looming threat breathing down his neck, he has to stay hypervigilant. He's got to source food and water for two now. Richard Parker actually becomes his anchor, keeping him sane and giving him a reason to fight off absolute hopelessness every single day.
And man, director Ang Lee does something brilliant here with visual contrasts. On one hand, nature is this awe-inspiring miracle. You get these mirror-like, perfectly calm oceans and glowing marine life that'll honestly leave you speechless. But then, on the exact opposite side, it's this cruel, unforgiving monster, whipping up terrifying sky-touching storms that threaten to erase them from existence. This incredible visual dichotomy perfectly mirrors the constant battle going on in Pi's own mind between divine hope and sheer existential terror.
So the final journey is just grueling. They drift for months just trying to hold on to this fragile, exhausting truce. Then they stumble onto what looks like total salvation, this bizarre, surreal island packed with thousands of meerkats. But actually, scratch that. As soon as night falls, Pi realizes the island hides a terrifying carnivorous secret, and they have to run right back out onto the water. Eventually, miraculously, they wash up on the coast of Mexico. And guys, this is the part that just breaks your heart. The moment the boat hits the sand, Richard Parker walks off straight into the jungle. He doesn't pause, he doesn't look back once. This unceremonious goodbye completely shatters Pi. He survived, sure, but he lost his companion to the wild without a single moment of closure.
That leads us to Section 4. What is the ultimate truth?
Okay, so Pi is finally safe in a hospital bed, and he's recounting this epic journey to these insurance agents. But they don't buy it. They absolutely refuse to believe his impossible animal survival story. So Pi is pressured into offering a completely alternate version, and this presents us with the ultimate dilemma. Story 1 is the animal story we just experienced. Miracles, faith, glowing oceans, and a tiger. Story 2, that's the human story. In this version, there are 0 animals. The orangutan was actually his mother, the injured zebra was a sailor, the savage hyena was the ship's ruthless cook, and Pi himself, Pi was the tiger.
It is this dark, brutal tale of human savagery and raw survival entirely stripped of magic.
And right there, Pi looks at the insurance agents, and by extension, he's looking right at us and asks, which story do you prefer? Because think about it, neither story can actually be proven, and both end with the ship sinking, his family dying, and Pi surviving. The facts of the outcome remain exactly the same. It's a brilliant move because it acts like a Socratic mirror, basically forcing you, the viewer, to actively participate and make a choice.
Let's wrap things up with Section 5, a deeper perspective.
When you really take a step back and look at this entire narrative, you realize we're dealing with something much richer than just a cinematic spectacle. It is a profound exploration of how we humans anchor ourselves to hope and to faith just to survive unimaginable fear and hardship. You know, the source text points out that the first half of the film, detailing his childhood, might feel a bit slow for pure action seekers, but now we see why it's so absolutely vital. It meticulously builds the psychological foundation you need for this massive emotional payoff. Ang Lee took this unfilmable book and brought it to life, using jaw-dropping VFX not just for flash, but to literally map out the internal landscape of trauma and survival.
And honestly, that is exactly why, for its incredible visual effects, breathtaking cinematography, and deep philosophical resonance, the reviewer in our source material rightfully awards the cinematic triumph a phenomenal 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's just an absolute masterclass that challenges you to look inward.
So I'm going to leave you with this one final provocative thought to really ponder today. What is your truth? When you look at Pi's journey, which version of the story do you actually choose to believe? Do you go with the miraculous story of faith and the tiger, or the stark, cruel reality of human darkness? And ultimately, what does the story you prefer reveal about your own worldview? Really chew on that for a bit. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.